Hello, freedom loving people, and welcome to the Restricted Handling Podcast, where it is our job to deconstruct everything going on in the international relations and geopolitics of the world. Today, we're joined by somebody new who spent 30 years in the U.S. government in various very senior diplomatic posts in Africa, the Middle East, Europe, the political counselor in Islamabad, Pakistan, a political advisor to multiple four-star generals at Central Command, which covers all the Middle East, of course, spent time in Brussels around NATO, and is the one person I'd put up as a human against AI in all things history and international relations. This is my old man, Ed Fugit, and sometimes affectionately known to me and my good friends as Big Ed. So, Dad, welcome to the show. We finally made it happen.
Looking forward to this. I'm fully capable of BSing on most subjects, and I'm accurate on some of them.
This has been one of the hardest technical leaps of our lives, to just get both of us on the same call with audio, visual working at the same time. So we're
That's
really
right. Yep.
excited to give this a shot. Okay, there's a lot going on globally. And actually having somebody with the background that you have, Dad, in India, Pakistan, I think will be fascinating, because we've got the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting taking place in Tianjin, China this week. And you've got a whole host of characters there. You've got Putin and Xi, of course. India and Pakistan are both members of the SCO, so not unusual to have them there. But with relations between China and India over the past 5 years being tense at best, and U.S.-India relations on rocky ground now, it's even more interesting that Modi is playing such a prominent role at the SCO this week. So lots to cover, obviously Russia, Ukraine, but I thought we'd start with the SCO. And Dad, just from the time you've spent covering India and Pakistan, what are your thoughts on what's going on at this summit and the fact that Modi is so front and center?
It's interesting that he is playing this role. These countries, which I call the BRIC, that's the name of their organization, and that stands for Brazil, Russia, India, etc. Okay, these are countries that, for various reasons, don't want to be under the yoke of the U.S. as the world power. So the meeting that's taking place is for show. Most of these meetings are anyway. But it's terribly important. Modi is ticked at the United States because of the tariff rules that are cutting into trade. Everybody, I mean, a lot of people are. Modi is different than India or Russia, than China and Russia, because he's an independent power and does not want to be subservient to anybody, including China. And by the way, China and India have been bitter enemies since independence of India, because basically there's a territorial dispute between them, and in the middle of nowhere up in the Himalayas, which both countries have fought over and could easily do it again. I mean, both of them keep significant garrisons up in those mountains.
I was surprised, actually. I'm just doing a little bit of research here, that 2020, pretty significant conflict along that border in Ladakh, India.
Yes.
I think 20 Indians killed, unclear how many, 20 Indian soldiers killed, unclear on the Chinese side. But that really hurt relations between the two countries. They only recently, like this year, reopened flights between the two countries, which is surprising as they border each other. So yeah, just another hot spot, but that has lingered for 5 years now.
The other side of that to keep in mind is think, okay, India and China is Pakistan. And anytime you talk about India, you have to talk about Pakistan. The Pakis are good friends with the Chinese and have been since 1948. And
was that just a counter to India from the start,
yes.
Dad? Yeah.
At the time of independence, Russia sided with India. This is in 1948. Russia sides with India. Pakistan sides with China. And there's a zillion other side things going on. But that's been, those two relationships have existed now for 60 years, 65 years. And I don't see that changing. Each of these three countries sees a benefit in doing this. India, I think you have to watch the summit, what kind of statements come out of the summit. And it's not just China, India, or Russia. I mean, there's the Brazilians, the South Africans, others are involved in this. It's a major event, and when it plays out and you see what the communique is, communiques, by the way, are really important. You know, we all thinking, oh, what a bunch of BS. It's not BS. It's written for a purpose, and we'll see what comes out of it. I suspect there'll be criticism directly or indirectly of U.S. economic policy.
So you mentioned tariffs, right, with India, and that's obviously created friction with the U.S., to put it lightly. 50% tariffs is what we've heard recently. But the other
Yes,
thing that we haven't touched on that I think is my assessment is driving Modi into the open arms of China and Russia here is the dispute, the clash that happened with Pakistan and India in April of this year, also in the northern regions, where there was border conflict that has now been somewhat resolved. And Pakistan had suggested that Trump should get the Nobel Peace Prize for brokering the ceasefire, where Modi has not extended that same sentiment to Trump, to Trump's frustration, is what has been reported. So you've got
right. Yeah.
tariffs combined with a little bit of maybe ego or just posturing at the national level for Modi that he doesn't want to see it note that the U.S. may have brokered this ceasefire.
I'll tell you, these kind of disputes that you're referring to are a dime a dozen in the last 60 years. They happen all the time. And there's going to be another one. This one was stopped. Both forces have significant units of their armies that are trained to fight in 15,000 feet altitude. And I flew up there when I was with CENTCOM. They took the general and I got along. And you get off a helicopter at 15,000 feet. There's no oxygen. It's quite a thing. But they have troops, both India and Pakistan, that work for months and months preparing to go up to 15,000 feet. It shows the level of distrust that both sides have. And so that you have a dust up, and there'll be another dust up. Everyone hopes that these dust ups don't lead to nuclear weapons. They both have them. Neither one wants to use them. They're stuck with them. I don't see either side employing them in the short term.
How would you advise, if you were kind of advising someone in the U.S. government right now, Dad, how would you advise them on a path forward with India in particular? I don't know if there's a way you would leverage Pakistan, or my assessment is you don't want India getting closer and closer to Russia and China.
Right.
What advice would you give or counsel would you
Okay.
suggest?
First of all, you have to look at the totality of our relations with India. It's not just political, it's seriously economic now. And the tariffs are a blockage of our relationship. It's making it worse, not better. And we're just at the beginning of this. Now, Trump comes in every couple of days and says, okay, we're going to postpone these, or we're going to do this, we're going to do that. He needs to do something more long term. And right now, you have tariffs on the amount of goods shipped from India to the United States is huge, and they're going to get punished. So India has no incentive to make nice with the United States in the short term because of this. This is a problem in international relations which I have not seen. Tariffs have not been a major factor in foreign affairs since the early 90s, and you had the Smoot-Hawley tariff, which some people who study history will say was a contributing factor to World War II because of putting these stringent restrictions on everybody. Anyway, that's a problem sitting out there, and the answer only comes from Trump.
The timing of this, the timing of the tariffs seems inopportune, to say the least. Just even if you had waited till after this summit, I think would have been better. Like, you literally have Modi on stage holding hands with Putin and Xi in a circle, the three of them.
Yes.
Pakistan is not on that stage for this photo op. Could you not have waited a few weeks until after this? I don't know if that makes it any better, but you could not have played any better into Xi and Putin's hands at this moment.
No, that's exactly right what's going on. And I don't know what the foreign policy advisors around Trump are telling him right now. Is he even listening? And that's the big point, because this is a serious geopolitical situation. And if the president is saying, oh, screw it, we're going to go ahead with these tariffs because they're going to work. Well, maybe they will, maybe they won't. But it's seriously undermining U.S. foreign policy. And the results, the benefit of which is hard to foresee.
How frustrated is Pakistan right now, do you think? Or do they like seeing India get the screws turned on them from the tariff side?
They probably do. We've already done it to Pakistan. But Pakistan is not the exporter to the U.S. that India is. Pakistan's economy is a different animal. It's much weaker, much smaller. Yeah, so they're probably happy. Anytime India gets screwed, Pakistan is happy, and vice versa. These two really don't like each other. It's amazing. It's been going on since 1948.
Okay. Do you think that what we're seeing is just a temporary reset between India and China? Or do you think this is actually the catalyst that's going to put them on better terms? I mean, just to be clear, I think India is maybe the third largest trading partner with China anyway. Despite all the bad tension in the public, economically, they are very tight. But India is really the little brother in that relationship just because of the way the exports go. But still, do you think this will change significantly the India-China relationship going forward?
No, I don't think so. I think this will be a short-term thing. Everybody will make up something. As I said, the communique, whenever it gets published, will have some indications of it. But India has its own foreign policy, its own objective. It wants to be a major power, not subordinate to China or to Russia. Well, it won't be to Russia, but the Indian government is going to continue to play all these sides. They want to be the non-aligned power in the world.
Not beholden to either side, right? The U.S.,
Yes,
Russia,
right.
or China.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, in the short term, they may say nice things to Russia. They may not. We're interested also seeing what India does vis-a-vis petroleum from Russia. They're buying Russian oil, which is why Trump said, okay, we're going to raise the tariffs up, which he didn't do with anybody else. In terms of using a problem in Ukraine as the benchmark, saying, okay, we're going to up the tariffs, does not help.
I think it's almost impossible to predict what Trump will do next. And that's,
No, it is.
yeah. But coming out of this, do you think he'll change his stance on tariffs with India? Is there some other, obviously we won't know what the communique says, but Kim Jong-un's supposed to be there. He's traveling by armored train right now, a 20-hour ride to the summit. He's going to be there. You're going to have Modi on stage with these other folks. Do you think that it forces our hand to some degree from the U.S. administration?
No, I don't. I don't see that being the catalyst for Trump to change his mind. He might. He's very difficult to predict, and I'm sure that those states at this conference would agree with that statement. They don't quite know what's going to come down next. This is the policy that is being enunciated out of the White House is unlike anything since World War II. It is chaotic in many ways.
If you were still in an embassy, Dad, how tough would that make things
Very,
just on the ground? It must be
I
so
often
hard.
think about guys that are in these embassies and being hit by these. Our embassy in India, which is a huge embassy and a very, very well-staffed embassy, when they go into a meeting at the foreign ministry, the first thing that foreign ministry hits them with is, when the hell are you going to cancel these things? Privately, that's the kind of back and forth, because it is a situation that has not occurred. No one has ever used tariffs as a serious weapon of policy across the whole world. And that's what he's going to do. And he may continue. He may, it could be that there's, by the way, I am certain there's back channels going on all over the place with India, with Russia, with China. And we have negotiators. They have negotiators. They're talking. And it could be that, India says, look, you can let go on this. We'll give you that. And then Trump can make an announcement that he has some sort of victory.
But yeah, I think it's going to be hard. So look, let's pivot now. Let's talk Russia, Ukraine. Obviously, Putin's putting on another big show here at the SCO, trying to show strength with China, India, and these other partners, moving away from the West. There's a little bit of talk about NATO's Eastern expansion, even at this summit. What, in your mind, what do you think is coming when it comes to Russia and Ukraine over the next few weeks, Dad? What are you seeing here? How do you think NATO is posturing? Any thoughts?
I don't see any signs one way or the other. The fighting has pretty much stabilized. Russia has made some small gains around the two oblasts. Ukraine still has the ability to control parts of the front. Ukraine's also getting more equipment. I don't know how much more we're going to be giving. The Europeans have been putting a lot of equipment into this, which is critically important For Ukraine to stay in this battle, they're going to need the sophisticated artillery, our HIMARS, and the British and German equivalents, which make a huge difference on the battlefield. These nations have to be willing to provide them and to continue to provide them. This will not come up at the summit because it's a NATO-Russia issue. It has nothing to do with these other states.
Okay, let's imagine that you are advising the U.S. government right now, and there is talk, right? I mean, seems like Trump wants a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. He promised it during the election period that he was going to see this happen on day one of his presidency. He's been working towards some type of peace deal. That aside, if you were advising, would you suggest that we should be brokering a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine?
Yes, I have to. The geopolitical, given the military situation on the ground, I don't know how long Ukraine can continue. The part I don't understand is how sure is Ukraine of getting military supplies from Europe and from us. If I was Zelensky, that's the main thing in my mind. Are we going to have the weapons I need to keep on hitting the Russian front line to keep it stabilized?
And if you were the U.S., though, not your Zelensky hat, but if you were just realpolitik and you wanted, and you were advising, would you still push for a ceasefire there? You're saying that the conditions on the ground, but if you could support, like you could continue to push funding and weapons to Ukraine?
Yes, I think we do that, but I think we also have to keep up a political presence. What can we do? Now, in the last month or two, I haven't seen any indications of willingness on the part of the Russians. The summit that Trump had with Putin was a fiasco. And it was a fiasco because it was planned overnight somewhere. Normally, a meeting like that is planned months in advance. This is major world policy. We did this, okay, hey, let's meet in Alaska. Oh, where's Alaska? Okay. So they go over there and the meeting breaks up, and that's not a good sign. Whatever Trump was proposing, and I'm not sure what it was not acceptable to Russia. Russia wants a complete agreement on essentially the demilitarization of Ukraine to make it so that it's not a possible threat to Mother Russia. So Putin is going to continue to push that. Zelensky will want, let's talk about peace. Let's have some ideas. I don't see him leading anywhere in the short term.
Yeah.
It's not a good situation in that regard. But we should continue to propose it. That's what diplomacy is. You keep on pushing these ideas.
I'm going to have a slightly spicier take on this, and maybe it's a little bit grounded in the idea that I am not convinced that Russia has enough military strength and public support within Russia to sustain this 18 months longer. And if that's the case, I don't understand why, when given this opportunity, we, the U.S., would not want, instead of sending Americans or Europeans to fight, support the Ukrainians the way we did the Afghans in the 80s to fight Russia until it forces change in that country. Their economy is hurting. They are having to silence almost everyone that speaks out against Putin. They're locking down their internet. Things are not going well for them. They're projecting a good face, but they had to get 10 to 15,000 soldiers from North Korea to fight. They're bringing Africans in to staff industrial parts of their economy because they're out of labor in some areas. Why would you not take the same approach that we took in the 80s and push towards forcing Russia to fight this out?
Well, I think we are. I think overall, we're continuing to provide military support to the Ukrainians to keep them in the fight. Without this equipment that's been going in for the last 3.5 years, there isn't a fight. It's over. Right. So I think that's what we've been doing. But we also want, again, the Europeans, their domestic politics is slightly different than ours. My understanding, feeling in Europe is they're willing to support Ukraine, but they're also, public opinion wants the Europeans to be on the side. Let's work at some kind of a peace deal, some kind of an understanding. I think most people in the short term know that's not likely to happen, not in the next couple of months. Maybe it will. Your comment, 18 months from now, they're not going to be able to hold out. Hopefully that's true. Ukraine's getting walloped too. I mean, both sides. both sides are taking real casualties.
I wonder, are we giving them enough? Like everything that we could? I mean, we're
No,
asking the Europeans to front a lot of it, which is the fact that the Europeans are the ones pushing harder for this fight than the US is also somewhat baffling to me overall.
yeah. Well, the White House is ambivalent. Certain times they're belligerent, and certain other times they're listening to Russia and saying, well, maybe Russia has a point. I think that's where it failed in Alaska. I'm sure Trump was unwilling to accept what Putin was putting out in Alaska.
I think Putin really wants a ceasefire here.
Do you?
I think
Okay.
now he'll push as hard as he can. And there's a part of me that wishes that the fact that we don't have a ceasefire yet is because we're playing some strategic game as the US and we're talking about peace, but slowly continuing to support Ukraine. But I don't think that's what's happening. I think Russia sees a peace deal coming, will try to get as much as they can out of it. I'm saddened that what I think is going to happen in the next couple months, we'll get some type of stalemate and ceasefire. Ukraine is going to lose ground. They're going to institute probably the Russian Orthodox Church in some of these places that have been taken by the Russians. They're probably going to try to change the language, and Ukraine will never be able to militarize effectively. And I'm not sure. I feel like we've seen this movie a few times in history, and this probably isn't the end of it. It's going to allow Russia to regroup when they're probably hurting quite badly right now. But you would argue the other way, Dad. And I don't want you to agree with me.
No,
Like, that's why you're on here.
I'm arguing, okay, we continue to throw out these different concepts in negotiations, but I think we understand in the short term, particularly after the Alaska fiasco, that nothing is going to transpire. Maybe in the fall, maybe October, November, you might see something. But
look, when we were fighting when you had the Soviet Union fighting in Afghanistan, were we trying to broker a peace deal there?
I don't think so. Looking back
Why
on
not?
it.
Why? I mean, we were actively supporting the Afghans, right?
Right.
On the ground. Why would we not have tried to broker a ceasefire there? Is it because the Afghans don't look white enough? And not to be too harsh there, but is it Ukrainians or white folks and more similar to us?
No, I don't think so. I think the Afghans couldn't see, they wanted Russia out completely.
So did the Ukrainians.
The Ukrainians do too, but the Russians, for whatever reason, Russia lost its will about 5 years into the fighting in Afghanistan. It's not worth it.
Right.
And that's a problem that okay, you haven't seen that yet with the Russians in Ukraine. They should be. They're suffering terribly. Putin can overlook that. Public opinion in Russia, what I've been able to read on it, is very much in favor of the government. The people don't want the war to go the other way. They don't want Ukraine to win. They believe Ukraine is part of Russia and should never have been allowed to be free. I mean, the story of Ukraine and its history is really interesting.
I would argue, though, everything you said would have been true in Afghanistan for the Soviets, where they had fairly strong control of their population.
Yeah.
Maybe not all of a sudden, but over time it changed with this war, and they left.
Yeah.
And I wonder if the same thing could be true here. Now,
Well, it could be. I don't see it happening in the short term.
no.
If Putin ends up pulling out of Ukraine, concedes too much in Ukraine, he could be in trouble domestically. That's the other side of it. Maybe not. Yeah.
I don't think he's going to have to concede that much. I think he's going to get quite a bit. I guess that's what I'm arguing is we should force him to fight this thing out longer and see. I suppose maybe the larger question is, does the U.S. want a strong Putin in Russia? I would think not.
No, not particularly.
No. So if you have a chance to weaken him domestically, I feel like you should take that opportunity. Either way, let's say, okay, Dad, let's say that there is a ceasefire in the fall, or maybe they get to the winter and Putin's going to push for everything he can while there's still the fighting season before things get cold. And then you get to the winter time and there's a ceasefire and some ground is ceded. Russia comes out all right. What is the status quo then? Or how does China then react with Taiwan? What does Russia do over the next 5 years, you think, with that stalemate? I suppose. How does it change the international balance and order of things?
Again, the devil is in the details. I know the Russians, if they were to concede, I don't think the Ukrainians are willing to give up more territory. They've already lost a bit. In other words, the two chunks, the two mini states that Russia controls, I don't see Ukraine getting them back. And I certainly don't see Ukraine getting Crimea back. There's all sorts of reasons, but it's just not, I don't see it happening. So Ukraine is not going to accept a bad ceasefire unless the Europeans and us say, by the way, we're cutting supplies to you in half because we want you to accept this is a good deal. Here's the issue, what has not been debated in the American press and really needs to, is what military role will the U.S. and secondarily NATO play in a peace settlement or a ceasefire in there? And the question is, Trump has been pretty clear, we're not putting American troops on the ground, which I think is a good decision because we simply don't want to be caught in a situation where you might have a ground war with Russia. Because if you put our troops on the ground and something happens and you get a bad weapons barrage and we get guys killed, then you get jingoism and you get people saying, oh my God, we have to go to war. Hold on. So let the Europeans staff it. Europeans have enough troops. They don't need an army in there. They just need troops to control the front. Now, if they can get that and that they're policing a ceasefire that Ukraine and Russia agree to, good luck. And we can be in the background with a lot of intelligence support, etc. That's what I see happening. And then it could then percolate slowly over months or longer. The situation on the ground is those two oblasts are not going to leave Russian control.
But that's more of the tactical, what will happen with the ceasefire, which I agree. I agree with everything you said. And I would even go a step further and say that I'm not sure NATO-aligned European troops would be put on that border, just because the same thing could happen where an errant weapon could hit one of them, and then all of a sudden there's a call for Article 5 of NATO being involved. So maybe you find some third. Either way, I see everything you said I agree with. I guess what I'm wondering is that it? Russia got what it wants and it's done for the next 5 years? Like, I think they probably rebuild, regroup. China probably looks a little differently at Taiwan because they say Russia simply invaded another country and now owns terrain there and can do kind of whatever it wants in those areas and has been blessed by the international community. I guess that's what I'm wondering. What do you think geopolitically and strategically happens to the balance of power? What does Russia try to do going forward after that?
Russia's long-term interests are much more expansionist than we want to understand in the United States. Russia wants to take more land going up to the Polish border, and a lot of politicians in Russia are pushing the idea that maybe Russia, needs to take over some of the Baltic states who are NATO members, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. Take over one of those, not now, but a couple of years down the road, because these states are linguistically Russian. And while the majority of the population in these states does not want any semblance of Russian control, there's a minority in all these states that's Russian, ethnic Russian, and they would like it. So they're maybe, let's say 20, 30% of the population. So that's going to play out. And certainly in Russia's mind, it lost all this land in 1990 when the Soviet Union collapsed. And Putin would like to get it back. Ukraine is just one step. He thought it'd be a quick step. We'd gobble that up and then go on. I think it's still in the back of his mind is to move on. But before he can do that, they've got to stabilize Ukraine. And that's not happening in the short term.
I mean, does this not sound like Hitler's move west or east in World War prior to World War II of I'm done, I'm not going to move any further. Okay, he said he won't.
Right.
I mean, truly, I'm surprised we don't hear more of this. Like, Putin's probably not done just because this ceasefire happens in Ukraine.
Right. That's something that hopefully we understand in Washington. It's very clear to me, yes, this is going to continue in one form or another. One of the two side events that took place the beginning of this war with Russia is Finland and Sweden switching over to join NATO.
Yes.
That's a big deal. Again, the American press, no one quite understands it. The Finns fought a 6-year war with the Russians, 39 to 45, and did very well up until the end. And then finally, their support from Germany collapsed, so they had to cut a deal. The Swedes historically have always fought with the Russians. The last big land battle, I think 1750, Sweden was a major world power and was fighting Russia. I shouldn't remember which of the kings did it. Anyway, those two countries have now switched over, and they're significant. The Finns have a military system similar to Israel. Every male is reservist. You have a weapon at home and you come in. So they can put hundreds of thousands of troops in the field in the short term if Russia comes after them. I don't see Russia going after them in the short term, but again, Finland was part of Russia until 1918. So was Crimea. I mean, there's a lot of areas that Russia think, hey, we like this back. Those are issues that Europeans think about. We don't and should be, because that's going to be a factor in anything down the road post-Ukraine. Also, Moldova.
Yep.
I mean, okay, unless you've got a map in front of you, folks, where are these places? They're terribly important. Our children are going to confront this issue going into the future.
So I guess that is the point the spicy take I have is that the fact that we're trying to broker a peace deal, if that's truly what we're trying to do, to let Russia pause and take ground that they have so far been able to grab, I think strategically is a terrible decision for the U.S. going forward. And I would fully expect my grandkids to be dealing with the outcome of this.
Yes.
Where we saw literally the complete opposite in Afghanistan in the 80s that we tout as the fall of the Soviet Union, like leading to Russia's demise and bleeding them out. Now, I understand more lives have been lost on the Ukrainian side. So maybe it's the loss of life that the world just doesn't want to see at this point in time. But I really think we're going to be dealing with something else later. So we'll wrap there. Dad, that was a lot of fun. Appreciate you making it out for this first one. Can't believe we finally made it happen. For those who are listening, if you're interested in getting more content like this, we've got a daily intel brief that I love to read and listen to. Just go to restrictedhandling.com, put in your email address, and you'll get something sent to your inbox every Monday to Friday that talks all about Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, Middle East, what's going on, curated from the news that I have spent months trying to get dialed in for what I want to hear. And then you can also listen to the Russia and China portions daily. That'll be read to you if you're on a commute and just can't read what we sent over. So hope you enjoy that. Head over to restrictedhandling.com and we'll catch you next time.